Chapter 18 The Green Fisherman. Alidoro had almost caught up with Pinocchio when the puppet reached the beach and jumped into the water. Alidoro couldn't stop in time and fell into the ocean. The poor dog couldn't swim, so he tried to keep himself afloat with his paws. The more he struggled, the farther he sank. "Help me! Save me!" Alidoro begged. Pinocchio, who really did have a very wonderful heart, felt compassion. He said, "I will save you if you promise not to chase me." "I promise," Alidoro said, "but hurry, please." Pinocchio remembered that his father taught him that a good deed is always rewarded, so he swam to Alidoro and brought him safely back to the beach. Pinocchio didn't really trust the dog, so he jumped back into the water and swam away. "Goodbye, Alidoro. Good luck to you," he called from a safe distance. "Goodbye, Pinocchio," the dog answered. "Thanks for saving my life." Pinocchio kept swimming. Along the shore he saw a cave with a cloud of smoke rising from it. As he climbed the rocks, he felt something under the water rising higher and higher and carrying him into the air. He tried to escape, but it was too late. He was trapped with a swarm of fish of every size and shape in a big net. The fish were flapping and struggling to be set free. Then a fisherman came out of the cave. He looked like a sea monster with thick green grass on his head instead of hair. His skin was green, his eyes were green, and his long beard, which reached down to the ground, was also green. The fisherman drew his net out of the water. "I'll have a feast of fish today," he exclaimed. "How lucky I am not a fish," Pinocchio said to himself. The fisherman carried the net full of fish into the cave. "Now let's see what kind of fish these are," the green fisherman said. He put his enormous hand into the net. He pulled out a handful of fish. Then he threw them into a pan without water. The last fish in the net was Pinocchio. The fisherman took Pinocchio out of the net. He looked at him and said, "This must be a crab." "I am not a crab. I am a puppet," Pinocchio exclaimed. "A puppet?" the fisherman asked. "That's a new fish for me. I'll eat you with the greatest pleasure." "Eat me? But I am not a fish. Do you hear me talking just like you do?" Pinocchio asked. "You are a fish that can talk and reason like me," the fisherman said. "You can decide how you would like to be cooked." Pinocchio began to cry and scream, begging the fisherman for mercy. "If only I had gone to school," he moaned. Pinocchio tried to slip out of the green fisherman's hands, but it was useless. He threw Pinocchio in with the other fish. Then the fisherman took a wooden bowl full of flour and started to flour each of the fish. As soon as they were ready, he threw them into the frying pan. At last, it was Pinocchio's turn. Pinocchio was so frightened, he couldn't move or speak. He was only able to beg for mercy with his scared little eyes. The green fisherman didn't care at all. He plunged him into the flour 5 times. The fisherman was just about ready to throw Pinocchio into the frying pan when Alidoro entered the cave. The dog was drawn to the cave by the smell of the frying fish. "Get out!" the fisherman shouted, but the dog was so hungry that he would not back down. Instead, he bared his fangs and growled. "Save me, Alidoro!" Pinocchio cried. Alidoro grabbed Pinocchio gently between his teeth and ran out of the cave. The furious fisherman couldn't catch the quick dog. Alidoro stopped running when he reached the path that led to the village. "I have so much to thank you for," Pinocchio said. "You saved me once, and one good deed deserves another," Alidoro replied. Alidoro then took the road home. Pinocchio went to a nearby cottage, where he found out that his friend Eugene had recovered from his injuries. Then Pinocchio headed for the fairy's house. "How can I ever show myself to her again?" he wondered. When he reached the fairy's house, his courage failed him at first. He couldn't knock at the door. Then he finally did. Pinocchio waited and waited. Finally, a window on the top floor opened. Pinocchio saw a big snail with a lit candle on her head, looking out of the window. "Who is there at this time of night?" she asked. "Is the fairy at home? It's me, Pinocchio," he said. The fairy is sleeping and can't be awakened. Who is Pinocchio? The snail asked. I am the puppet who lived in the fairy's house, he answered. Oh, yes, she said. Wait for me there. I'll come down and open the door. Be quick, I'm freezing, Pinocchio said, sighing. My dear boy, I am a snail, and am never in a hurry, the snail replied. Pinocchio waited at the door for hours, and at last he knocked again, and this time he knocked louder than before. A window on the lower story opened, and the same snail with the candle on her head appeared. I have been waiting here for hours. Please hurry, Pinocchio whined. A few hours later, the door was still closed. Losing all patience, Pinocchio kicked the door. It was such a hard blow that his foot went through the wood and got stuck. At daybreak, the door opened at last. The little snail had taken 9 hours to come down from the 4th floor of the house to the door. Why is your foot stuck in the door? She asked, laughing. It was an accident, Pinocchio said. Can you try to free me from this trap? My boy, we'll need a carpenter for that job, the snail said. I have never been a carpenter. Please get the fairy for me, the puppet begged. The fairy is asleep and must not be disturbed, the snail replied. At least bring me something to eat. I'm starving, Pinocchio said. I will, at once, the snail said. 3 hours later, the snail returned and said, The fairy sent you this for breakfast. Pinocchio was very pleased to see this delicious feast, but when he began to eat, he was quite annoyed to discover that the bread was made of plaster, the chicken was really cardboard, and the apricots were glass. Pinocchio wanted to cry. He tried to throw away the tray, but he was so upset and tired that he fainted. When he woke up, he was lying on a couch, and the fairy was standing beside him. I will forgive you one more time, Pinocchio, the fairy said sternly, but don't misbehave a 3rd time. I will not be so quick to forgive you again. Pinocchio promised that he would study and he would always be good and obey her from then on. For the rest of the year, Pinocchio kept his word and was on his very best behavior. He didn't even miss 1 day of school. The fairy was very pleased. Tomorrow your wish will be granted, she said one day, smiling at him kindly. Tomorrow you will no longer be a puppet. You will become a boy. Pinocchio was thrilled. To celebrate the special event, the fairy told Pinocchio that she would prepare a wonderful breakfast feast. It was going to be a delightful day, and Pinocchio jumped and danced with joy. But in the life of a puppet, there is always something that ruins everything.